15 years ago, a young woman stood by her husband as he chased his dreams of wealth and success. She worked tirelessly, sacrificing her own aspirations to support him through thick and thin. But when his fortunes finally turned, so did he. Blinded by newfound riches, he dismissed her loyalty, trading their quiet life for one of glitz, glamour, and someone he deemed more fitting for his elevated status. Heartbroken and abandoned, she was left to pick up the pieces of a life they had once built together. But life has a way of surprising us. What he didn't know as he walked away, without a second glance, was that the woman he left behind wasn't just a loyal partner, she was a force to be reckoned with. Determined to rewrite her story, she started from scratch, diving into a world of challenges she never imagined she could conquer. Slowly but surely, she rose through the ranks, building something so extraordinary that even her wildest dreams couldn't compare. Now, 15 years later, the tables have turned. He's on the brink of ruin, and she's at the helm of an empire that commands respect and awe. What happens when their paths cross again? Will he recognize the woman he once underestimated? Or will she remind him of the lesson he taught her all those years ago? Stay tuned for this riveting story of betrayal, resilience, and sweet, sweet redemption. The young woman who had once been discarded like an old dream refused to let despair consume her. She was left with nothing but her determination and a quiet promise to herself she would rise. While her ex-husband basked in luxury, enjoying the company of people who only admired his wealth, she began her journey from the bottom, starting with small, seemingly insignificant steps. Her first opportunity came in the form of a job at a small cafe. The hours were grueling, the pay barely enough to make ends meet, but she approached every task with purpose. It wasn't about where she was, it was about where she was going. Customers began to notice her attentiveness, her natural way of making them feel seen. When one particularly impressed patron asked why someone as sharp as her was working there, she smiled and said, "This is just the beginning." That patron happened to own a modest real estate firm and offered her an entry-level position. Though she had no formal training, she threw herself into learning, spending late nights studying contracts and market trends. Her knack for understanding people, paired with her growing expertise, made her stand out. In a few short years, she climbed the ranks, eventually using her savings to buy a small property herself. That purchase marked the first spark of what would become an empire. Meanwhile, her ex-husband, the once dazzling tycoon, was losing his grip. His success had been built on risky ventures, and cracks began to show as the market shifted. Lavish spending and poor decisions only made matters worse. His new wife, who had once adored his wealth, grew distant as the glimmer faded. By the time he realized his fortune was slipping through his fingers, it was almost too late. Still, his pride wouldn't let him admit how precarious his situation had become. The years passed, and their worlds grew further apart until fate had others plans. A high-profile charity gala brought them back into the same room. He was invited out of habit, a relic of his former prestige, while she was the evening's guest of honor, celebrated for her incredible success. When their eyes met across the crowded hall, he barely recognized her. Gone was the woman he had cast aside. In her place stood someone unshakable, radiating confidence and power. She noticed his shock but offered only a polite nod, her expression unreadable. The encounter sent him spiraling. He couldn't ignore the irony. The woman he had left behind had achieved a level of success he could now only dream of. Desperation gnawed at him as he began researching her rise, realizing just how far she'd come. Her real estate empire wasn't just thriving, it was dominating. Every deal, every headline was a reminder of her triumph and his decline. Yet she wasn't content to rest on her laurels. Her ambition wasn't driven by revenge, but by a desire to prove to herself that she was capable. Along the way, she had built a network of trusted allies, mentors, colleagues even, employees who had once struggled as she had. Together, they were more than a business, they were a movement. Her vision extended beyond profit, focusing on revitalizing neglected neighborhoods and creating opportunities for those overlooked by society. Her story became an inspiration to many, though she rarely spoke of her past. As her empire grew, she encountered new challenges. Rival firms, threatened by her rise, sought to undermine her. Some used underhanded tactics, planting false rumors or attempting to poach her clients. Others tried to buy her out, offering sums that would tempt even the most ambitious entrepreneur. But she stood firm, knowing that what she had built was more than just a financial success, it was her legacy. Meanwhile, her ex-husband's life continued to unravel. Facing mounting debts and lawsuits, he was forced to sell off his assets. The once mighty tycoon now found himself on the brink of bankruptcy, with few friends left to turn to. Swallowing his pride, he sought her out, hoping to appeal to her sense of compassion. But when he arrived at her headquarters, he was met with an imposing receptionist who informed him she was unavailable. Undeterred, he waited, determined to speak with her directly. When she finally emerged, she stopped in her tracks upon seeing him. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was heavy with unspoken words. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice trembling. "I made a mistake," he admitted. "I didn't see your worth back then, but I do now. Please, I need your help." Her expression softened, but only slightly. "It's not about what you see now," she replied, her voice calm yet firm. "It's about what you chose to ignore back then." The tension was palpable as he tried to explain, to justify his actions, but she cut him off. "I don't owe you anything," she said, her tone unwavering. "Not an explanation, not forgiveness, and certainly not my help." He left that day with his head hanging low, realizing just how far he had fallen. But her words lingered, a reminder that actions have consequences. For her, the encounter wasn't about vengeance. It was a moment of closure, proof that she had outgrown the shadows of her past. Yet the story was far from over. Unknown to her, a new threat loomed on the horizon, one that would test her resilience in ways she hadn't faced before. A powerful conglomerate had taken notice of her success and saw her as a direct competitor. Their methods were ruthless, and their reach was vast. As she prepared to face this new challenge, she couldn't help but wonder, would her past come back to haunt her in unexpected ways? The stage was set for a showdown that would determine not just the future of her empire, but the legacy she had fought so hard to build. And as the pieces began to move, one thing became clear: this was only the beginning. The woman knew the battle ahead would be unlike any she'd faced before. The conglomerate targeting her empire wasn't just another competitor, it was a behemoth with resources, influence, and a reputation for crushing anyone in its path. But she also knew that she had built her success on more than just financial acumen. Her strength came from her values, her ability to see opportunities where others saw obstacles, and her refusal to back down from a fight. As the conglomerate began its campaign to undercut her, using aggressive pricing, legal maneuvers, and even smear tactics in the media, she doubled down on her principles. She called an emergency meeting with her closest advisors, outlining a strategy that focused not on retaliation, but resilience. Instead of lowering herself to their level, she emphasized transparency, authenticity, and the trust she had built with her clients and partners. Her team rallied behind her, their loyalty unwavering. Many of them had been with her since the early days, and they knew that her vision wasn't just about profits, it was about creating something meaningful. Together, they launched a counter-campaign, highlighting their commitment to revitalizing communities and empowering individuals. Testimonials from those whose lives had been transformed by her work flooded social media, painting a stark contrast to the impersonal, profit-driven image of the conglomerate. But the fight wasn't without its toll. The stress of the conflict began to weigh heavily on her, and there were moments when doubt crept in. Late at night, she would sit in her office, staring out at the city she had helped shape, wondering if she had the strength to keep going. It was during one of these moments that an unexpected visitor arrived. Her ex-husband stood in the doorway, looking smaller and more worn than she remembered. He hesitated before stepping inside, holding up a newspaper that bore her name and the conglomerate's latest attack against her. "I saw this," he said quietly, "and I thought, maybe you could use some help." She raised an eyebrow, unsure of his intentions. "Help from you?" she asked, her tone laced with skepticism. He nodded, setting the newspaper down on her desk. "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I've been where you are fighting battles like this. I know how they operate. I can give you insight, strategies, whatever you need." For a moment, she considered dismissing him outright. But something in his eyes gave her pause. There was no trace of the arrogance that had once defined him. Instead, he seemed humbled, almost desperate to prove himself. Reluctantly, she agreed to hear him out, setting strict boundaries and making it clear that this was a business arrangement, nothing more. As they worked together, she found herself surprised by his contributions. His knowledge of corporate warfare was extensive, and his advice proved invaluable in navigating the legal and strategic challenges posed by the conglomerate. While their interactions remained professional, there were moments of unexpected candor. He admitted his regrets, not just about their marriage, but about the way he had lived his life. "I thought success was about having everything," he confessed one evening. "But I didn't realize I already had it until I lost it." She listened but didn't offer forgiveness. It wasn't that she hadn't moved on, she had, but some wounds didn't need to be reopened. Still, she couldn't deny that his help was making a difference. With his guidance and her team's unwavering dedication, they began to turn the tide. The conglomerate's tactics grew increasingly desperate as their initials efforts failed to weaken her position. They filed a baseless lawsuit, hoping to drain her resources and tarnish her reputation. But she countered with evidence of their own unethical practices, exposing them in a way that garnered widespread public support. The media, once eager to sensationalize the conflict, began to paint her as a David against their Goliath, a symbol of integrity in a cutthroat industry. In the end, it wasn't just her resilience that won the day, it was the strength of the community she had built. Clients, employees, and even competitors rallied behind her, united by a shared belief in what she stood for. The conglomerate, unable to recover from the damage to its reputation, eventually retreated, leaving her empire stronger than ever. With the battle behind her, she took a moment to reflect on everything she had endured. Her journey had been far from easy, marked by heartbreak, betrayal, and countless challenges. But it had also been filled with triumphs, relationships that enriched her life, and a sense of purpose that no amount of money could buy. She knew now, more than ever, that her worth wasn't defined by anyone else, not her ex-husband, not her competitors, and certainly not those who doubted her. As for her ex-husband, their paths diverged once again. He thanked her for allowing him to help and admitted that working alongside her had been a humbling experience. "You don't need me," he said with a faint smile. "You never did." "I know," she replied simply, and with that, he left, disappearing from her life for what she hoped would be the last time. In the years that followed, her empire continued to thrive. But her greatest satisfaction didn't come from her financial success, it came from the impact she made. She used her resources to fund scholarships, support small businesses, and create opportunities for people who reminded her of herself in those early days. Her story became a source of inspiration, a reminder that resilience and integrity could triumph even in the face of the greatest odds. Looking out over the city she had helped shape, she felt a sense of peace. Her journey had come full circle, and while the scars of the past remained, they were a testament to her strength. She had built something extraordinary, not just an empire, but a legacy that would endure long after she was gone. And as the sun set on another day, she smiled, knowing that her story was far from over.